Welcome back to Chants and Rants. I am joined by Father Edmund.
Yes.
And he is a Norbertine here at St. Michael's Abbey in
Silverado,
California.
Wild West.
And he is going to share a little bit with us about the music here at St. Michael's and what the Norbertines are all about. And we're really, really excited to be here on site at the Abbey to chat with Father Edmund.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Paul.
Yeah. So let's start very broad. Who are the Norbertines?
Yes, so the Norbertines are a Catholic religious community founded by St. Norbert of St in Germany back in 1121. So we just celebrated 900 years of our order's founding. He founded the order in the north of France in a valley called Prémontré. And our official title is actually the Canons Regular of Prémontré. Now, a canon, I don't know if you know, Paul, or if our listeners know, is not a weapon when referred to a person. Some of us are loose cannons, but that's a story maybe for off the air. A canon, a priest, is somebody who's on the canon. A canon in Latin means a list. So, for instance, you have the Roman canon, that list of saints from Rome, or who died in Rome. And so we are priests who live in a particular place for the liturgical upkeep, as it were, of that place. We're on the list for St. Michael's Abbey. So I have made a vow of stability to South Orange County, which I have to say is just a great sacrifice I make for the church, but I'm happy to do it. In any case, so our official title is the Canons Regular of Prémontré, or the Prémonstratensians, but because that's kind of a mouthful, we just say Norbertines. Prémonstratensions, exactly.
Which is indicative of the region in France where you began.
Exactly, and that speaks to that reality of the vow of stability to a particular place.
Yeah. So people are used to, Benedictines and Franciscans. Franciscans were brown.
Right.
You, like the Dominicans, wear white, right?
Yes.
So why white?
Well, the simplest answer is because that's the color which Our Lady gave St. Norbert. She appeared to St. Norbert and gave him the habit, but he went on to reflect that he wanted his canons to wear white like the angels of the resurrection. He said, to be a witness of Christ in his passion and resurrection. And a little historical fact, with all due respect to the Dominicans, whom I love very much. This is very hotly debated, so I won't say too much, but just to say that it may be the case that Dominic, if he was not a Norbertine, at least that he was educated by Norbertines, or at least that he got great inspiration from the Norbertines, because when you look at our way of life and our habits, it's very similar.
So Norbertines predate Dominicans?
Yes.
There you go.
We're, I think, about 100 years older than the Dominicans.
And this abbey has a lot of vocations. Almost in terms of the global trend of would you call yourself a monastic community? Because you do secular duties, right? As priests, you guys are in schools, you're at parishes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, the life of a Norbertine is a life of a monastic priest. So a priest implies that he does go out and minister. The priests are ordained for the sacraments, but we live a monastic life, which we always come back to, and that's really the heart of our life, the liturgy, etc. But you're right, we have been blessed with a number of vocations. We have 13 men coming in August, and we have about 40 seminarians right now. So
40 seminarians?
Yes.
Just in this community?
Just at St. Michael's.
Yeah. That's honestly unbelievable. That's really beautiful. So walking around today, I was talking with my wife, like it really does feel like a very anointed place. There's a, and maybe since you live here, maybe it's not as startling because you're familiar with the peacefulness. But what do you think is the root of that? Like what makes this place a special place spiritually?
Well, I think ultimately it's a grace from God, and some of our order, or how the houses of our order have been these great places of peace and rest, and then have crumbled for whatever reason. So we have to pray for the grace and ask our listeners for the prayers that we stay faithful to our charism. And that faithfulness to the charism is, I think, the key to, as you say, this sort of anointedness of this place, because our life revolves around the chanting of the Psalms and the monastic choir, the daily office, Mass, most principally. That life of the liturgy is one which is, that's the official prayer of the Church given to us by our mother, and so we live and breathe that, that life.
So official prayer of the Church given to us by our Mother Church or Mother Mary or both?
Mother Church.
Okay, yeah. Because I thought you might be going, I know there's very pious traditions about Mary being in the School of Psalms, and of course the Magnificat. She gave us one of the principal prayers of the Liturgy of the Hours.
Right.
But why not both?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. She's an image of the Church, and she is the Queen and Mother of the Church. So I thought you were going to say though that okay, so what? Mary gave you the habits.
Oh no!
And your liturgical books, So, but no.
You have a very beautiful image of the Assumption. All of this has been built last 3 years on this
Correct.
site, but you had an older site not far from here, where, as I understand it, they were refugees from communism.
Correct.
And I've heard the Norbertines used to be the most populated religious order in Europe.
Yeah, I don't know statistically if that's the case, but we were all over Europe.
But then a lot of revolutions and upheavals kind of...
Exactly. So like French Revolution, we're a French order originally, and French Revolution basically decimated our order in France.
Yeah.
And then other governmental uprising, etc. Religious life in general took a great hit through these various regimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go back to you. You were talking about charisms, and I was talking to one of your brother priests earlier today. He said, well, charisms as applied to a religious community is more of like a modern idea. It used to be just like we're trying to be excellent priests, good holy Catholics, build the kingdom of God as a general principle. But in terms of how you would define, if we were to use the language of charism, what would you think? What would you say the charism of the Norbertines are, or the Norbertines here even?
I would say it's being a witness to the Church and to Christ's love through the choral recitation of the Mass and the office.
Yeah, I love it. There was a responsory yesterday in the Liturgy of the Hours that said something like, it was in the Office of Readings, and it really jumped off the page for me. It said something like, let us, or maybe it was in daytime prayer, something like, let us contemplate the beauty of
holiness.
Put up on the screen exactly what the text was. You're renewing the Church, you're holding fast to the traditions of the Church through a devotion to beauty, to a devotion to prayer, to worship, and you are a assistant to the choir direction here or music. How would you call your role?
Yes, so technically I am the sous chanter, which, as far as I know, is basically like sous chef.
Yeah.
Okay, so the person under the chef. So there's a cantor. He's in charge of all the music at the Abbey, and he leads choir rehearsals and sees to it that the music of the liturgy is happening as it should, etc. I basically do a lot of that work as well. I also lead a little polyphonic schola, which we sing on special occasions, special feasts. So that's my main work. So I'm very involved. We kind of share that work, but he's technically in charge. So
yeah,
religious life is all about seniority, and even the way we sit at table is in order. So
I love
hierarchy.
I love it. Which of your liturgies are open to the public? Because I went to Sept today, beautiful, and even though I was assured we have a lot of things going on right now, so this is not our full force here. It was still absolutely beautiful. I love the absence of amplification generally of microphones. It's just the space really joined in the praise, which I love the idea of a consecrated space as it reflects sound,
right,
being kind of a witness of the angels and saints who are present, that there's a dynamism there that's so powerful, even when it's quiet. There's a dynamism there that's so beautiful for reflection. So, what percentage of your liturgies, or maybe all of them, are open to lay people just popping in?
Yeah, we are open from, I think, 5:30 a.m. until 9 p.m. every day. It doesn't matter what holiday or whatever, it's always open, and all of our prayers in the Abbey Church are open to the public. So if you want to come at 5:45 for Matins and Lauds, you're most welcome. We don't do the, like our sisters in Tehachapi, they actually do rise at midnight and do the midnight office of Matins. We weak canons that we are, we do it in the morning.
At 5:30?
At 5:45.
Like pre-dawn as it was.
Exactly, exactly. Which is, by the way, for our listeners, I mean, this is the way most religious orders, I would say, do it now, and it's completely permitted.
And many priests. Many priests still treat matins or office of readings as like a more fixed hour, even though for very busy
technically you can do
floating,
it anytime,
the floating office. So do you do lauds immediately afterwards, or is then...
It's connected, so we basically do office of readings, and then we don't do the hymn, we don't conclude it, and we don't do the hymn for lauds, we just go straight into the Psalms.
And then one collect.
And then one collect at the very end, yes.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And then do you ever, by curiosity, do you ever combine an office with Mass like they allow in the new rubrics?
We don't here. I'm trying to think. In Rome, our Roman house, which is technically a different house of the order, they do.
It's very common. In Italy, it's very common. Like I went to the Florence Cathedral once this last year, and I was with a couple of American friends, and they're very devout Catholics, and they had their Italian-English missal out, and it was right in the cathedral, and they turned to me and said, "Paul, is this a different rite? What is going on here? Where do I find this in the faith?"
Florentine rite. Yeah.
I said, "I got you. This is they're just combining lauds with Mass here." And then
Lass.
I was able to show them. Yeah,
we used to call it Lass. Sorry.
I love that. I love it. So in terms of the music that you do Gregorian psalm tones.
Yes.
Do you use any of the solemn books for like the hinge hours or on feast days?
We do actually. So we use the Liber Hymnarius for most of Lauds and Vespers, the hymns. Most of them come right from there.
Perfect.
We don't always use the same melodies because the thing is, so this is a whole discussion.
Yeah.
But we do have our own Norbertine Chant.
Yeah.
Which we still have technically our own Norbertine rite, like the Dominicans have their rite, etc.
I never even heard of that. I love it.
Yeah, it's basically, I believe, shortly after Trent, our order almost adopted wholesale the Roman rite. So there's very few differences now.
Yeah.
But in the Middle Ages, there were some major differences in the liturgical rite. But in any case, right now at St. Michael's Abbey for the novice order office, which we pray, which is, by the way, as you experienced at midday prayer, it's the same office as the rest of the Roman Church prays.
Yeah.
But we supplement that with our own hymns and things, and sometimes antiphons from our own books, which are very slightly different than the Roman chant. So I'll give you an example. During Mass, the Pater Noster, the Roman chant ends, sed libera nos a malo, right?
Yeah.
And we end, sed libera nos a malo. So you get a nice dissonance of a major second, a whole step, if people are not familiar with the Norbertine ending, or the Norbertine Pater Noster. So little things like that.
That's fantastic.
Or the Salve Regina is another fun one. So the Roman Salve Regina is Salve Regina, right?
A simple tone.
A simple tone. And ours, we go Salve Regina.
And the rest is the same?
No, the rest is different. But it's just funny how it's a mirror image almost.
Well, what's really, really beautiful is, and this is, we're near mission territory of our great patron in California, Junipero Serra.
Yes.
I've done a lot of recent study in the musicology of the missions, which is
actually
fascinating. It's a vast field because there is at least 30 complete chant books that have survived.
I didn't know that.
And they're like, when I was a kid, before I became Catholic, as a kid in California history, you got to study the missions as part of history. So
4th grade.
We would go on field trips, and there'd be Native American artifacts and like cool like pickaxes and things that they used to chop wood, and that would fascinate me. But as like a 10-year-old kid, I'd then see these massive, this big graduales, antiphonales, chant books. I'd be like, boring. What is that all? And now every time I go to a mission museum, I'm like,
you read through it.
I even will sing
chant.
whatever it's open
whatever's
to.
there. Yeah.
And what's really fascinating is that it's in several of the chant books, there's a consistently unique Salve Regina, which is similar but not the same that Unipercera would have sung with his priests. And I think that what's really, really wonderful, and this is part of the work of the liturgical renewal in the last 200 years, is that there's a lot of legitimate and beautiful diversity and beauty. And it's very exciting that in terms of what that beauty and diversity is it's still all chant. It's still largely, monophonic, although even in Unipercera's chant books, with square notation and even some quasi-modern notation, sometimes it's like 7 bars on the staff. There's some weird things that go on in those books, but they did polyphony with the neophytes, where you had the notes stacked up, and it's honestly, I would think it would be the coolest project ever if we could get a hold of those books, digitize them. They've probably already been digitized, and then bring to life some of the, because scholars say that the monks here, Unipercera and his fathers, they actually likely invented some of those polyphonic compositions, and a lot of them survive, but they're obviously just dead in the book. But it would be such a cool thing to, and this is obviously a total
that would be really
aside,
cool.
but like it's really, really central to the identity of Unipercera that back in Majorca he was a cantor. And he was, I believe he was the dean of one of the departments at the University of Mallorca. He was a scholar, a cantor, had a totally renowned voice. And even though he was like 5 feet tall, he had no like special like machismo or bushwhacking skills.
Right.
But at an advanced age, he came to California and he really evangelized with chant. So what you're doing here is right in the line of how California was evangelized in the first place. It was evangelized through beauty, through sacred music. Yeah. And I think that's a really special connection that's being continued here.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you for sharing that, because I didn't realize that he had such a prominent role in the music there in the missions. But that's so encouraging to hear, because I have to say, it's very humbling and very beautiful. In addition to being the assistant cantor, I'm also the guest master, and so I do a lot of tours for people who come up here, and there are more and more people. I mean, there are busloads of people coming up here, and some people who just hear about us, in the local paper or whatever, or online, and they just stumble up here, and they're just kind of, it sort of starts off as curiosity, but then they're sort of captivated by this strange, beauty, and it's beauty. And so, I mean, I'm a huge believer that, as Dostoevsky said, beauty will save the world.
Yes.
So that's neat to think about that with Unipercera also.
And I mean, it's really astounding. I obviously was born and raised in California, and I have people who I meet around the country who say, "Oh, you're from California? Have you been to St. Michael's Abbey?" And I would have thought, from how much buzz there is of this place around the country, even around the world, I would have thought this has been here for 10, 20 years in its current form. But it really, new. I mean, that is such a testimony to how, leading with beauty, as they say, is such a powerful testament. And it's also amazing how the chants you do and the liturgical life you have here, it kind of transcends liturgy wars, so to speak. Like, people don't really know what to do with it. They don't know, is this the Latin Mass? Is this the Novus Ordo, as they say? Or it's very confusing for people, because people are used to the binary of like strange modern music in
English,
like a really relativistic setting. That's the current rite.
Yes.
Versus like rigid rubric and
smells and bells.
Yeah, smells and bells. And it's such a crazy, almost prophetic witness to have something that transcends the expectations of what maybe like people expect liturgy to be on two ends of a spectrum. Yeah. And so what would you say is like, how do you guys avoid that? Like what is the sign of contradiction here, which is a good thing, that like makes this transcend what people would call maybe liturgy wars? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Maybe the sign of contradiction is Sacrosanctum Concilium of the Second Vatican Council. I mean, the thing is, if you read the council documents, it's asking for something which I think our liturgy is not perfect, by the way. I would say, we're not, we have our own things to work on, but it is very beautiful, and it's largely makes use of Latin, although we do use some of the vernacular. But it's just a well done Novus Ordo, and there are other places I would say in the States that also do this sort of thing. But you're right, it is kind of few and far between. That you kind of have your very parochial, happy clappy English.
We use that term. We use that term a lot on Chants and Rants. Happy clappy.
There we go. So your listeners know what I'm talking about. Or right, the stark contrast of a traditional Latin Mass. But I, for instance, when I was in college, I went to Ave Maria University down in Florida.
Yeah.
And I started going to the TLM there as a student. I didn't know about it before that. And I fell in love with that, and it was very beautiful for my prayer life, etc. Even considered entering the Fraternity of St. Peter. But when I kept visiting the Abbey, and then when I entered, I didn't miss that. It wasn't like this lacuna in my soul that, oh, woe is me, I'm just pining away for the Latin Mass. I mean, I love the Latin Mass, etc. I'm, a huge fan of it, all the rest. But it's refreshing to see that, yes, it is possible to have beautiful liturgy in the new rite. And
I had one young gentleman a few days ago say to me, you have to go to the Abbey. They do the Latin Mass, but it's not the Latin Mass, but they do the Latin Mass. And I mean, so many people lack the terminology. On Chants and Rants, we talk all the time about the concept of doing a lawful Mass. That lawful not just in the letter, but in the spirit. That for example, you were just saying that you sometimes do some polyphony, and that's an explicit recommendation in Second Vatican Council. It says in Sacrosanctum Concilium, it says Gregorian chant gets in the Latin. It doesn't say quote unquote pride of place. I think that's a mistranslation, because in the Latin it just says the first option, first place, which then it is. Like in the missal, you have when it says for the introit, it says option 1. Graduale Romanum.
Exactly.
Option 2, Graduale Simplex. So it literally is the first place, the second place. All this to say that it's funny how even with these little things, like you say, well, we're doing polyphony too. It's like, that might be it. You're just really, you have a reverence for Sacrosanctum Concilium, for the ideas, the spirit, and people say the spirit of Vatican II, but the spirit of Vatican II can't be opposed to the letter, surely.
Right, not the real spirit. Yeah. I mean, that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, sure.
But, I mean,
sorry. No, I'm not meaning to get political. This is more. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is an interesting conversation. I mean, there was a whole spirit that sort of infiltrated the council, I would say, in a certain sense. But what happened exactly and all that, I'm not really the one to talk to about that.
Sure.
But yeah.
Your priests then work in many different areas. Like I met a priest who, I mean, his basic life here is he cooks and he brews things, and that's super cool. But then I also know a dear priest friend of mine who runs a school in Long Beach. So you guys do very, very many different things in the broader area. But then there's still liturgies in common done in the chapel.
Right.
Are your masses? Do you ever do low masses, quote unquote, like unsung, or do you really just pretty much sing everything? Pretty much every day.
And our constitutions speak about this, that the conventual Mass, that is the Mass of the convent, of the cloister, is sort of the pinnacle of our liturgical day. Mass is, of course, the greatest part of the liturgy, and the liturgy of the hours kind of come from that. So that is always sung in some respect. I mean, sometimes it's partially spoken, partially sung. Sometimes we sing a hymn in English, sometimes we sing a chant, etc. But nonetheless, that always has singing as a part of it. On Sundays, there's kind of an exception. During COVID, we started, this is one of the happy faults of COVID, we started offering more Masses. We have now 2 Masses on Sundays. So the 7 o'clock is kind of a low Mass. It's just one priest and a server. It's completely spoken. And then there's the 9 o'clock, which is the high Mass with the sung liturgy in chant. So yeah, we don't really have a low Mass except for that kind of exception.
Do you sing the readings at Mass?
On feast days.
On feast days, nice, excellent. And then, what is your big solemnity here that's unique to here? Do you celebrate both Norbert as a solemnity and then St. Michael?
Yes. So I'll start with St. Michael because that's coming up on September 29th. We have a cosmic event which happens here. Okay, so we built the church. The architect built the church and positioned it so that the sun shines through the rose window in the back and illumines the high altar at about 5:15 in the afternoon on September 29th.
Wow.
And the medievals loved to do this sort of thing, to kind of imitate the order which God had placed in creation. And that was one small way that we could continue that venerable tradition. So we have this great cosmic event. So the church is packed for Vespers, and sometimes we'll have a kind of a dinner or something afterwards. That's a really cool event, which still depends upon Almighty God, of course.
Your weather. And...
So this past September, it was a rather cloudy day.
I know.
And so it was a little anticlimactic, although St. Michael was good to us. He let the clouds part for just the very end as we were processing out of Vespers, so the sun kind of glimmered on the high altar. But so there's that, which is a big feast for us. And of course, the Mass that day is very solemn. But then St. Norbert's Day, we just started doing a kind of festival. I would say that's the most, aside from maybe Our Lady of Guadalupe.
Isn't he in June?
He's in June 6th. Yeah. So we have a whole day event. People can come and go as they please, but it starts with Mass, and then we have a procession with the relics of St. Norbert on our property, and then we have various booths set up, kind of explaining aspects of our life, vestment making, icon writing.
Do you make your vestments?
We have maybe a couple of confers now who make vestments. Yes,
wow.
Yeah.
And then you also have icon writers.
We have several seminarians who have really learned, how to write icons here. A couple of our priests actually designed some of the mosaics, which are in our Abbey church.
Beautiful.
So
they're absolutely beautiful. If you were, talking to someone who is interested in the order, does singing come up as? Do you know how to, is there a voice tryout?
Oh dear.
Do you ever get people who join who cannot sing? Because I noticed that everyone was in exultant, perfect, near perfect. I mean, for a layman with the reverb.
Did you have earplugs in? No, I'm just kidding.
So because singing is such an important part
well,
of it.
Yes. So see, there's this magic thing that happens in the Abbey church with the 9-second delay or whatever, the singing goes up into the upper regions and comes down, and it's perfect when it reaches the laity. No, but basically, it's funny you ask this because I teach co-teach the chant class to the novices.
Okay.
So that's basically more or less daily choir practice with some history and theory in there as well. And I do make it a point to the men in the class, I'm not their formator, I don't meet with them for spiritual direction. It's not, singing is not like a be-all, end-all, believe it or not. For us, it's not like, you can't sing, sorry, you don't have a vocation here. But I do stress to them, I'm like, look, even if you don't sing, you just have to realize that the life that you're committing yourself to is a life of singing in choir every day. Like that is what you spend most of your day doing, is singing in church. So if you hate singing, or whatever, or you just feel like that's a really big burden, maybe this isn't for you.
Do you have people who, when they enter, have a pretty untuned instrument in their voice, and then they kind of like learn?
Absolutely, and that's why I said that sort of caveat that I don't actually make that kind of decision, and I never would tell a man you have a terrible voice, therefore you don't have a vocation. I visited Salem for about a week in college.
That's awesome.
One of the monks
in France, the original.
In France, we had a master class there in chant, and one of our teachers was telling us that one of the monks was asked about this very question that you asked. What if a man can't sing? And he enters and he says, if he cannot sing, he learns very quickly. They are like, they're very much about the music there. For us, I would say most of the men, even if there's been very few, I would say maybe even none that are actually, what's it called?
Tone deaf.
Tone deaf. That's pretty rare.
I meet very good people who are. A lot of people think they
are. A lot of people think they are, but with practice, and we bring in sometimes an extern voice coach to help people as well. So it's possible that if you even can't really carry a tune, yes, you still may have a vocation at St. Michael's. But I'm just saying, as the chant teacher, it's just something to consider and think about.
Okay, just a couple more rapid-fire questions. What is your favorite chant? Or what is one of the chants that you've been meditating on lately? Hard to pick a favorite, but...
Gosh, yeah, there's so many. Probably my favorite chant of all time is the Veni Creator Spiritus, the hymn.
You know what? You really are. Veni Creator Spiritus was the main anthem and theme song of Junipero Serra and his fathers. They sung it on the road. They sung it when they founded a church. They sung it at the beginning of their day. They sung it multiple times a day. They sung it in their voyages. That was the the soundtrack
That's awesome.
of the Mission Fathers.
Well, there we go. This is a providential meeting here, because I need to start praying more to our patron here.
My heart leapt a little bit when you said that, because that's the answer for the California missions. That's
absolutely. Amen. No, it's a beautiful. I mean, I think just obviously the text is absolutely exquisite, but then I mean the melody, I think, is one of the best melodies has ever been written. It's just so perfectly balanced and just very pleasing, you know. So.
All right, let's sing the first line. You ready? Veni Creator Spiritus, mens impletura visita, impletus verna gratia, yeah.
Now I gave away.
No.
It's my favorite, but I don't know it by heart.
I need the text too. No.
We my excuse is that basically for all of our life here, we always use all the text. So
there are a lot of chants that are my favorite that I also don't know. Like I love the introit for the Requiem Mass. Requiem. Yeah. I scramble the words all the time.
That's a beautiful one.
That's gorgeous. So I really appreciate your time. Check out St. Michael's Abbey. You guys are on Instagram,
Facebook, I think, Twitter.
We'll continue to pray for the Abbey and join you as we do the Liturgy of the Hours, because you're doing the same prayers that we do every day. And
yes, well, I have to say thank you, Paul, for this great work that you do, because it's amazing to hear just how you said earlier in this interview that, you know, I was reflecting on this responsory from whatever hour it was, you couldn't remember, but the fact that you knew it, you're praying all the time, the official public prayer of the church, that is so efficacious and so beautiful, and great, really encouraging and edifying witness for me as a priest to see lay people so attentively praying the prayer of the church. So thank you, and keep praying. Pray for all of us.
I do try to let it guide my internal meditation throughout the day.
Well, thanks.
Until the next hour. You know, it's only a 3-hour chunk. But as a final note, what would your recommendation be I get emails daily from people who say, you know, I really want to implement Liturgy of the Hours at my parish, which is really the vision of Sacrosanctum Concilium, that pastors of souls should see to it.
I remember that line, yeah.
Powerful line, and I think that's an unrealized fruit.
Yes.
The tree is just hanging with the fruit ready to, you know.
Yeah.
So is there an encouragement or a tip or both that you'd give to a layperson or a priest? I get a lot of emails from priests too, like, how do I even get started? What would that look like?
Well, I would say the first place to start would be with Vespers, because this used to be a tradition, you know, for centuries, I think, that Sunday Mass. I mean, Sundays were such a consecrated day in past centuries. We've really lost that. That's a whole other podcast. But we've done like 5 podcasts. That's great. But you know, people would go to Mass in the morning and then come back for the sermon, actually, or the homily, and Vespers, and benediction often was, I think, also coupled with that. So, you know, ask your parish priest, ask the pastor, you know, maybe if you can even get a group of people together first, meeting in homes, and you know, learn how to do it yourself, and get people to sing with you, etc., and have this group that meets in houses at first, and then bring it to the pastor and say, you know, we have this group, you know, we're starving for this, you know, however you want to say it, and be respectful, of course, and realize that he may say no, but I'd say, you know, I think it would hopefully warm a pastor's heart to see that his people want to pray more in his church, you know, like that's the whole point. I mean, like that's why we're priests, is so that we get people to God in prayer. So yeah, and pray for it, you know, pray to St. Cecilia. St. Dunstan is another less known male patron saint of music. He used to play the harp, and the devil would run away while he played the harp. So anyway, that would be a suggestion. I think especially Vespers, because Lauds can be difficult, I would say, especially in a parish setting. You have the priest would just immediately probably say, like, that's a nice idea, but like I have like 5 masses to say,
and I got to wake up early,
and I got to wait. You know, all the. Yes, I can speak to that, actually. I don't like waking up early, even though I'm part of a religious order that does. So, you know, it might be a harder sell, but doesn't mean you can't try also. But I think that would follow, once you start Vespers, then you could slowly implement Lauds as well.
Okay. That's really good advice. So start in your home. Yeah. I mean, it can bless the domestic church.
Exactly.
Perfect. So. Well, thank you so much, Father Edmund. I really
You're
appreciate
welcome,
your
Paul.
time.
Yes.
And this is an anointed place. Check out St. Michael's Abbey. And thank you for joining us again on Chants and Rants. Have a great day.